Welcome to the Roar Mindset, Leading Through Chaos. I'm Peter Brandenburger, and I help leaders embrace chaos to turn disruption into an advantage. Each episode brings stories and strategies to help you stop fighting disruption, lead with clarity, and thrive in uncertain times. Most of the time, when we talk about leadership, we picture people managers, executives, or founders. But another form of leadership that is often overlooked is technical leadership. Technical leadership is not just being a technologist who solves hard problems, but also a leader who multiplies capacity of others, shapes direction with impact, and architects solutions within complex systems, all while keeping an eye on how to get these solutions to market so that it matters. In today's world, innovation cycles are fast, ecosystems are interconnected, and solutions require collaboration across disciplines. So the ability to translate complexity into meaningful movement is essential. And the mindset behind strong technical leadership applies far beyond engineering. That is why I wanted to bring a technical leader onto this podcast. So my guest today is Anil Kumar, a principal engineer at Intel and a system architect in the client computing group. For 2 decades, Anil has worked across global ecosystems to bring computing solutions to market. I've seen him partner with customers, collaborate across cultures, and tackle technical and business challenges together. Be prepared for a few technical examples in this episode, but don't be scared away because this conversation is for all leaders. We define and dissect technical leadership and how it differs from management. We explore lessons from Google TV, what it takes to shift major roles, and why a broader perspective is critical in complex environments. Anil also shows what motivates him to leave a comfortable role, and you may be surprised to hear why a deeply technical leader chose to become a certified coach. Enjoy. Welcome, Anil. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. Let's start with a question that allows people to know a little bit more about who you are and what matters most to you these days.
Yeah, I work at Intel as a system architect, working with our customers, OEM customers, to allowing them to use our chips and produce mobile laptops that actually caters to the needs of our customers. And I have been in this role for about 4 years now, totally about 19 years at Intel. I'm based out of Phoenix, Arizona. And what matters to me most today is to ensuring that I create a bunch of people that works along with me who are equally good or better than me that can continue into the future and help the company and the ecosystem and the industry forward. That's what is most important for me today.
Yeah, so that sounds like both a little bit of collaboration, working with others, and I don't know if it's mentoring and coaching, but helping others along. Does it mean anything else to you?
Absolutely, you're right. So it's more about collaborating across the geographies in different countries and different cultures, and also those who need mentorship, act as a mentor, those who need sponsorship, uh, act as a sponsor, and then for more senior folks who just need to have a coach, act as a coach for them. It all depends on what they need, not what I think is the right thing to do.
Yeah, meeting the others where they're at. That's a nice approach. Well, I wanted to have you on to talk about technical leadership, and which is a little bit different than managerial kind of leadership or leading a team or a group. So maybe let's just start off with what is technical leadership and maybe explain it to those who may not be familiar with it. And what does it mean to you? Maybe a little personal spin on it as well.
Absolutely. Right. So I'll start with who is a technologist. Technologist is a person, a scientist or an engineer who develops technology. But I see technical leader are slightly different from that. He's not just he or she is not an individual contributor. The technical leader should be able to not only create technology on their own, but also develop the other folks around them to develop technology in a collaborative manner. They are going to be a multiplication force, right? So if you have a technical leader in a group, they are not only responsible for their outcomes and deliverables, but they are also an accelerator for other people to perform equally good or better. So that is technical leadership.
Yeah. And what brought you to technical leadership?
It's an evolution. So early on, I was just doing what I needed to do. What was the project asking me to do? Then I saw that in these complex systems, you are not starting from scratch. You sometimes start in a company or a project where many things are being done or they are not going the right way. Then you have to go there, learn what they are doing, and you are not the expert of the system from day zero. So you had to go to each of the experts, work with them. Then very soon I realized working in this industry where you really have to ship a product, you need to be humble, you need to be able to collaborate. And also when new people are going to rotate in and out of the project. So you need to teach them, sometimes train them also. So you should be willing to do all that to get, your goal is to get a high quality product out there on time, but you should be able to do everything that is required to do that, not just what you think is your prescribed job. So I never say that is not my job, right? So I will either do it myself or I will find the right expert to do it and propose that she or he do that, right? So the realization that without collaboration, we cannot achieve anything really, that got me to transform into a technical leader than the person who is trying to do everything by myself.
Yes, that moved you from like you said earlier, an individual contributor as a technologist to somebody who can do that, but also collaborates and brings technologies to market through collaboration.
Yes.
Yeah. I like the humility as well. And yeah, bringing other people along. It reminds me of the 3 criteria of Intel that the technical leadership pipeline is gauged off of. One is, how good you are technically. What are the problems you've solved, and what was your contribution to those? How hard or difficult were those problems? And you'll need to correct me if I'm wrong on the rest. But the other is strategic impact, or what I think. So it had business impact and was strategic. In other words, you can't just come up with a technology that's useless. It needs to actually impact the business and the market and come to market. The other is role modeling or mentoring and helping others along. And I've always loved those. So I guess, did I get those correct? And
Absolutely. You still remember them in the right order and very accurately. So that's great.
yeah,
That shows that you have been involved in this for several years, right? So
yes,
just
as you
because
know.
you're outside the company for a couple of years, you're not going to forget that.
Yeah, I've always liked those because I think they apply to all leadership, and it depends upon the priority and maybe the focus of those.
Correct. Yes. I think technical leadership impact and the development, leadership development of the future candidates, they are quite important. And then business impact is also very important, as you said, because we don't want to solve problems that nobody is worried about. So the ability to collaborate with business leaders, they may not be technically savvy like you are, but they have a lot of ecosystem knowledge. They are talking to the customer, so they understand what is going on. They are interviewing people in the market, doing market studies. They are going to the Walmarts, Costco's, Best Buys, and looking at how people buy the PCs. So they are really having a ton of knowledge, and you should be able to be willing to sit down with them, listen to them, and try to distill the knowledge they have and use it. You know, if I may, one thing that irritates me a lot here with my colleagues is that sometimes they say that, oh, I talked to this business person, she is not technical. I talked to that business person, he is not technical, he doesn't understand my solution. Then I would ask this person who is telling me, what do you mean by that person is not technical? Explain that to me. I will immediately demand them to explain that back to me, right? So if anybody is working on finance, they are the technical person for finance. If there is a doctor, he's also technical in the medical technology, right? So each one is an expert in their field. That should be our definition of technical. You cannot say you are not technical because you don't do everything that I do, right? So that is a little bit of not correct definition in my opinion, right? So everybody brings value. Your task is to find what value they bring and collaborate with them and extract the value for the better purpose of what is your shared goal, right? So that is what I think collaboration means, right? So not networking with everybody just for the sake of collaboration, but what is that you need? How are they going to gain by working with you? So it's a two-way path.
Yeah, and what also came to me there is, if somebody is not getting what you're talking about, what can you do to help that? In other words, if you're talking in technical in your own I'm trying to not use that word technical, in your own area of expertise jargon, and you're talking to, let's just say, a finance person who may not understand that jargon. Can you communicate in a way that understands the importance, what the value is, what the big piece is? Like, in other words, take ownership for that miscommunication and not blaming the other person for not getting it.
That's a great question. You earlier asked me what are the characteristics of a technical leader, and I forgot to tell that the ability to communicate your solutions, the value proposition of your solutions, how it will benefit people in a way that matters to them is critically important for a technical leader, right? So if I'm talking to you and you are not understanding what I am saying, it's really, I need to go back to the drawing board and change that communication. I need to ask you the questions instead of telling you. Right. So if I have a conversation with Peter, the first thing I should ask Peter is, why are we talking today? What do you want to get out of this conversation? And how will you use the information you get from me today? Right. So what are your future plans to use it? So if you answer those very basic 3 questions, then I can tune my communication or my pitch to you in a way that adds value to you. Right. So being really curious is the key. Why is this person talking to me? I need to understand. What do they want to accomplish by talking to me? Well, actually, you need to answer the question, what is in there for them, right? That's very important. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a win-win.
Yes.
What is it in for them? So those 3 questions, make sure I got them. One was, what did you want to get out of the conversation? How are we going to use it in the future? What was the third one?
And so what is that you want to get from me today? How will you use that information in the future? And how will it help you in your goals?
How does it align with you and help you?
Yeah, the overall context, right?
Yeah.
Always try to understand the big picture, right? So,
Yep,
yeah.
the why behind maybe the request or the conversation. Yeah.
Actually, if I may go on, one thing I am very hesitant to do is on the instant message, if somebody asks me, and then can you tell me what is the power for XYZ? I will immediately give them the answer they need. And I would also ask them, how are they going to use this information? Are they in a meeting? Are they going to make a decision about the size of a PC, the cooling solution, or anything? Then I would say, actually, I gave you the correct answer to your question, but maybe you need additional information that may not be very useful to you. Maybe this other information that I'm going to give you next will be very useful to you, right? So I will try to understand why somebody is asking the question. So I'm very fearful of information being taken out of context and people drawing really wrong conclusions and starting down a path where it is going to not lead to best outcomes.
Yeah. And the other thing about technical leadership is maybe in your mind, how does it differ from managing people or managing organization, other types of leadership?
Yeah. Managing people, they are responsible for making sure that the resources are available. They are responsible for the career development of the people. They are making sure that the project, working with the project and product managers to ensure that the right culture is built in the team, etc. Right. So technical leader should be really collaborating with the people leader in their organization, whether it is in your own working with your peers or in working beyond your immediate peers, maybe working with your manager's peers or their second level to make sure that the technical direction of the group is set. Because I think the managers are making sure that once you agree on a roadmap, once you agree on an architecture, it gets executed properly. But technical leaders should make sure that based on the economic situation, based on the ecosystem situation, what the customer needs are, and also what is happening in the competition, right? So advise the people managers to set up the right roadmap and the right solution. So we need to be architecting for impact so that the other people, when they do their work, they are really producing an impact and the company is benefiting as well as the people are benefiting, right? So at the end of the day, we are not doing this for entertainment. We are doing it to produce economic value. We should not forget that.
Yeah. I love that term, architecting for impact. I've heard it from you before, but I just wanted to call that out for everybody because it's such a great summary of why you're doing this. It's not just architecting for some cool technology or develop the technology and somebody will figure out how to use it. No, you need to develop a solution or architect so it's creating and So there's some creation and problem solving and all that goes into architecting and making sure that there's impact. In other words, it comes to market, there's benefit, et cetera. It's not sitting in a closet somewhere or on a shelf as a patent.
Yeah, exactly. Also, we need to make sure that sometimes we understand the technology, we collaborate with people who understand the technology, and we really push it forward. For example, at Intel from a silicon perspective. But the
Hmm.
key is that any solution on hardware needs great software also for people to use that, right? Uh, so I have made the mistake of pushing hardware solutions single track minded forward because all the people working along with me were also expert in it and they believe this is the best technology. At the same time, we were blindsided by the need of not having aligning other companies that can utilize the hardware we made and putting the software stack on top of that. So we have a vertical stack that our customers can use and provide an end-to-end solution. So very little of what we actually developed got used in the way we actually thought it will be used, right? So those are lessons I learned to make sure that just don't make too much advance on one vector while you forget about the other vectors of the solution, right? So you have to move forward everything together in like
Mm.
we know about wavefronts, right? Energy move in wavefronts. Although in physics textbooks we see it as energy as a ray, an arrow going forward, it's actually multiple arrows that forms a wavefront, right? Having the IP, having the silicon, having the board, having the firmware, having the software, and having this third-party applications that is needed, providing the right user experience. All of this should move in unison in a coherent way, right? So
Mm.
laser is a coherent wave. That is why it is very impactful. It's not distributed, right? So incoherent, right? So when we say we have to be laser focused, we should not be focused on just one aspect of it that I am familiar with. I have to go talk to everybody and understand what other pieces needs to be there in the stack for it to be useful, right? So I can think of a couple of areas in the last 30 years where I did not do that.
Yeah, maybe before we jump into one of those examples, I like the idea of one or a couple things came to me. One is a full solution. So making sure it's everything. I mean, you were talking about hardware, software, firmware, third party applications, getting it into the market is all part of it. But I like that it's moving forward as a wave. I like that metaphor, or maybe energetically it's actually happening. But coherent. I love the word coherence, coherency that you raised, and a coherent effort requires collaboration, is what you were
Yes.
saying.
Collaboration. Yeah.
In other words, it's unlikely that coherency is going to be by accident. It's going to be by effort and by alignment and moving that forward.
Exactly. And you need to be sometimes zooming out of the immediate. So if you are too focused too much and zoomed in, you don't think about the others. From time to time, you have to zoom in and zoom out to solve
Mm.
problems, right? So maybe take a day's break and go away and come back and think about the same thing. Then you come up with, you know, some other ideas
Yeah.
and the gaps. Yeah. Zooming out, I didn't know how to zoom out in the past. That is something I learned probably after 2018.
Yeah. After COVID.
Yes.
Yeah. So the zoom in, zoom out, I was thinking, I think there's a couple of aspects of zoom in, zoom out, or a couple of definitions to it. One is zooming in technically to your very narrow area of focus, or let's just say something like hardware where you have, and then zooming out to the full solution. The other thing is like your effort and focusing. So focusing on the, whether it's the whole solution or whatever, and really being engaged in it, and then disengaging to allow for other creativity to come up, which is, uh, I think, been a pretty proven method by a lot of folks. Of you, if you stay in the if you stay in it too long, I was going to say, so if you stay in the soup, you can't really figure out anything new or allow something creative to come. So I'm
Absolutely.
hearing both aspects of those.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there a story that you want to share or can share with folks about maybe some of these things we've talked about, zooming in and zooming out, or understanding the full solution in coherency?
Yeah. Earlier in my career, right, I worked in the telecommunication industry. And as you know, telecommunication industry is really having a dedicated connection in the old times between the caller and the receiver, right? So whether it is a computer or a person, you have a dedicated line from the source to the destination. And when the whole duration of the connection, nobody else can use that, right? So with the advent of the internet and the Ethernet, it meant that multiple people can do statistically multiplex and they send packets over the same line. So the utilization of the line went high and the cost of having a connection came down. Right.
Mhm.
So in the internet, the packets were of variable sizes. And for telecommunication systems who are used to fixed size bytes in the earlier case, it was difficult to adapt to Ethernet directly. So a technology was invented where you take all the data bytes, packets, and make them all the same size, like 53
Mhm.
bytes, if I remember correctly. And it was called asynchronous transfer mode. And the short name for was ATM, asynchronous transfer mode.
Mhm.
Looking back now, we call it another technological mistake. ATM stands for another technological mistake. Because if you want to make all the packets the same size, you had to collect the package, put a lot of memory is needed. You had to chop them up, build them back in the same 53 bytes. A lot of,
Mhm.
whenever you receive and transmit, a lot of memory was needed, and memory is expensive, right? So, and that technology didn't take off. And unfortunately, I worked on that technology in two different companies because the hype was that, and then we spent a lot of effort, and it's all very good learning experience. But at the end of the day, the systems you made got actually deployed in the field. Like people even brought some of them to Arizona and put it under the street in the heat of it and did
Mhm.
trials, but it never went into high volume product. And what we see today, the internet-based, IP packet-based solutions took over because the key was for the IP packets, there was a huge ecosystem of software developed from the computing industry.
Mhm.
The number of developers on the IP-based solutions were huge, and the upper level software, if you remember the ISO 7-layer protocol, it was already there, and the internet protocol was very right. So people
Mhm.
could just utilize the software ecosystem and familiarity, right? So from the Unix networking and things like that. So the hardware was elegant, but then it couldn't compete with the huge ecosystem of inbuilt solutions out there.
Right.
Yeah.
And probably some consequences, you said, of memory,
Yes, cost
memory cost.
and then large amount of processing circuitry. So it was becoming economically not that viable from
Yeah.
even a hardware perspective.
So, what are some of those lessons that you've learned from this example or this ATM?
I would say innovations doesn't mean that you do something brand new, totally not done before. Innovations can be incremental, improvement on existing technologies, and changing legacy systems to make one improvement at a time and move it forward, right? So working in companies like this, what you can easily do is incremental improvements rather than doing something brand new. You have to understand which company are you working for, what is its goals, its goal to come up with a clean slate solution. And if you are going to do a clean slate solution, how it is going to be successful, right? So what is your go-to-market aspect, right? So one of the things technical leaders should be able to think is what is the go-to-market? Often we forget that, because the supply chains are complex, right? So at the company that I work for, we make chips. Then somebody designs a system or an OEM specifies a system. A contract manufacturer or an ODM actually designs or manufactures the system. Then it needs to be getting shipped. Then it has to go to the retail stores. Different retail stores, as you know, have different priorities, right? So
Mhm.
some want to showcase things, some want to just sell them with the lowest margin, but in large volume. So where is it going to be, right? So one of the things I realized when I worked on Google TV was that the price of the TV is not determined by the people who are making the TV, but the major US retailers.
Mhm.
One of the major US retail will say a major Japanese brand. This is how much square footage you are going to get in my different types of my stores, class A, B, and I want you to sell 3 TVs for this year, and this have to be the maximum MSRP for them, right? So they said that, and then
Mhm.
then the OEM makes a deal with the retailer, and then they come back to us and say, hey, your electronic BOM cost needs to be X amount of dollars. We had to work through that supply chain, so we need to cater to all of them for something to be successful in the market.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an outside in constraint for sure, what the
Yeah.
final MSRP and probably schedule
Yes.
is my guess. So you have a schedule, you have the cost, and then now you're figuring out the technology and all the KPIs or the key product indicators. How is it going to perform? What features it's going to have?
Absolutely. It's not the best technology that always wins. It is the technology that can cater to the business need that always get popularized.
Yep, that's interesting. Anything else from your time with Google and are working on Google TV?
Absolutely. It was a startup kind of group at Intel, and there were multiple collaborators. Obviously, the silicon came from Intel, the software stack and the content came from Google, and there were different OEM partners, and OEM partners have their preferred different ODMs. Even though the design, the foundational design is same, we couldn't tell all the OEMs to go to the same ODM and get it all manufactured so that the small group at Intel can just support one ODM and have different products come out of it, right? So that was a late breaking challenge for us because we thought we have a basic reference design that can be converted into different form factors each OEM needs, but all of this can be manufactured at one ODM with a lot of capacity. But different OEMs have their preferred suppliers, and we had to scale the team at the last minute to work with the support with the different ODMs, right? So that was a key lesson. And then I was one of the main architects there. And then for me, working with the silicon team on the system architecture as well as supporting the different ODMs were not feasible. So we had to go on a high velocity recruiting spree to get three more architects to be recruited who actually can hit the road running without much training. So that was a challenge. That was a time of enormous growth, but things had to be finished in a very short cycle time. Trying to launch a product and also building a team, helping my manager and other managers building the team simultaneously was like a good challenge that I experienced.
Yeah, sounds like a challenge. And maybe the right technical solution is to have one reference design that everybody could use at one ODM, but finding out that that's not how the TV manufacturers wanted to do it. Realizing it and pivoting quickly, a lot of uncertainty and a lot of disruption. I think this disruption of the plan that you had and that it is needing to be something different now.
Correct. This was constant realignment based on knowledge we gained by visiting the ODMs and OEMs and people in the supply chain, right? So by go and getting advices from those people or bringing them into this team, what actually helped us finally hit the targets.
That's great. I mean, two things. One is getting outside of your team at Intel and into ecosystem partners and people you were working with to hear what they wanted. And it also sounds like you brought in some of that expertise as well.
Yes, we vastly harvested people from other parts of Intel who have done this multiple times.
Yeah. I talk here on this podcast a lot about uncertainty and disruption. And I know one of the times that this happened for you is when you may move from one business unit to another business unit in Intel. And for those who maybe aren't familiar, this is pretty much different companies, different business focuses, different way of dealing with things. And so, yeah, why don't you explain like what was the uncertainty and how did you deal with that?
We had COVID in 2020, and then we were working from home. And then I asked the question myself, what am I learning new? Right. So I had a feeling that, I was working in certain domain or certain end-to-end solutions. A few of us have been there from the beginning till the end for about 5 to 6 years. Team was spending a lot of time educating those folks who are newly coming, ramping them up. They come, collaborate, they actually produce good results, but then they move on for better opportunities within the company or outside the company. So this became repetitive for me because I noticed that I am teaching others, but I'm not learning anything new.
Yeah.
I kind of become the go-to person for this technology or this solution. And incidentally, I produced a lot of internal documentation for that. And collaborating with my colleagues, I actually wrote 2 books during that time. I was working on the Internet of Things, and Internet of Things won't be Internet of Things if you don't connect to the Internet. So I wrote a book called Connecting the Internet of Things, based on the various technologies we were developing or we were adopting into this market. And also, once you connect, systems will get exposed to security vulnerabilities. So security was also important. So I worked with the security technologies and collaborated with them and helping them write another book called Demystifying Internet of Things Security. But the main question that started bothering me was, what did I learn new last month? What did I learn last week? What did I learn in the last 6 months? I felt that I am kind of plateauing out.
It's interesting because, publishing 2 books, being a go-to person, a lot of people would be like, hey, I've arrived. This is the place I want to be. But you in that spot are not complacent and wanting to know, hey, where can I continue to learn? Where can I continue to grow? And knowing you, there's probably a little bit of giving opportunity for others to take on what you've been doing as freshness for them or novelty for them, and allowing you to step into new space.
That's also very true. Going back to that work I was doing at that time, we actually had multiple people promoted to on the security domain, real-time computing domain, as well as connectivity domain, right? So because they were multiple peers of mine become principal engineers, and many of them were my mentees. That is very true. But for me, turning the mirror towards me, my question was, what are you learning? And since we started working from home, and that question started coming more frequently to me. So I started exploring within Intel. So many of them are advertised as architects, system architects. But when I talked to them, I realized that some of the positions for very upfront research type architecture for doing architectural analysis of A versus B versus C, or making projections of things, and how a user experience can be translated to a real product, things like that. And multiple discussions, I realized that maybe that's not where my capability is. That is totally new, but I will not enjoy that. So that is when Peter, one of my colleagues and mentors suggested that I talk to you, and I started the exploration with you. And then that led to another opportunity, even though I interviewed with you and your peers and colleagues. I ended up taking another opportunity in an adjacent team of yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting that you were wanting to get something new, but yet it's not just anything new. Like you were cautious. I guess you were clear to yourself that there was a piece that you had to have passion aligning to this new space or this new area of learning. Because what I'm getting from you, and I'm knowing you, I think you were confident that you could learn something, but it was making sure that it's aligned with a passion or desire so that you find it interesting and that you bring energy to that new space.
Absolutely. So I needed to have the learning aspect. And as you mentioned, it needs to be something that excites me, not something boring. And the third one was also, I didn't want to go too far away from my core capabilities, where I wanted to make sure that I will start adding value within the first 90 days. Right. So those 3 were the 3 considerations I had.
I always encouraged employees who work for me, like what's interesting you and what's next, and take on something new. And if the new thing doesn't scare you a little bit, it's probably not new enough, but still being close to your capabilities. I think it's a nice balance. As far as learning something new, I know you took on coaching formally and have been trained in it. What made you step in as a technical leader to want to coach people and get certified in coaching?
So what was enlightening to me is that if you come up with a solution, for example, Peter, you're going to own it and you are vested in making that successful, and will make a lot of effort to make that successful.
Mm-hmm.
I could also come and tell you the same thing, and then you are going to at least view it as something that Anil told me to do, right? So there is a slight difference in the amount of energy you would invest in that case. So in my mentoring and collaborations, I realized that if I just nudge people to come up and say, well, this is how I would like to solve the problem, I saw that there is more of an ownership there. and they are going to do fantastic, right? And then I took a coaching for excellence class at Intel. Then I realized that coaching is exactly helping people to discover what they already have, but they were not probably aware of, right? So helping them see themselves in a different light, you know.
Mm.
We all have different capabilities, but we may not be aware of what capabilities we have. So helping people see their capabilities themselves, that sounded interesting to me. That
Mhm.
is why I delved deeper into it and then went for the deeper training and using rather than telling, asking the questions so that people can find their own answers. That excites me a lot.
Yeah, and how has coaching helped you with your technical leadership?
If I think about it, actually, coaching helps me make a better person in my interactions. So I start asking myself those questions before getting into an interaction, right? So while we think we are helping others, we are actually helping ourselves by having these regular interactions with the different sets of people, with different mindset, different cultural background, different geographies, right? So working in a multinational company, you come across people from all over the world, and they are all going to enrich your experiences.
Yeah. I always think a coaching engagement is mutually beneficial. Coaching can help you, even though you're helping the others just as much.
Exactly. You don't realize at the moment, but then if you reflect on it, that, these incremental benefits add up over time.
Yeah. What's one thing outside of work that you've learned that's helped you as a technical leader deal with uncertainty or disruptions?
I always have a plan, and then I realized that having a plan is good for you to plan, but the success comes from your ability to actually throw out that plan, ditch that plan when it doesn't work, and then immediately pivot and come up with a plan B. And if that doesn't work, don't get anxious or angry. Try the next one, right? So earlier, I had the feeling that everything I engage in has to go in a straight line, has to be exactly 100% correct. Now, if it doesn't actually go that way, I'm still comfortable. I'm still okay. I'm not going to get anxious. I'm not going to get angry. So, yeah.
I mean, I'm hearing adaptability where you have a plan and throw it out and adapting, but also being aware that you need to throw it out.
Yes. Yeah. Don't clinging on to the plan like this is the rule of the law or something like that. When something changes, some of the input variables change, you need to come up with a slightly modified plan or a totally new plan, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. And I always think of you as a very calm person. So I would think that when something needs to be changed, just not getting too worked up about it. Where do you think you get that strength from?
Well, it was not always like this, Peter, right? Working with the vast majority of people from different cultures in different countries, that is what helped me shape like that.
Mm.
Yeah. Uh, and, uh, Earlier, I was like, oh, this is what I decided. I need to get that. If I don't get that, I'll make all the efforts. I will try many different methods to reach there. Now, it's no more that way, right? So, how can we change and achieve something better or something different? I'm happy to ask that question. So it comes from probably years of experience
Yeah.
and also looking at some of the things like I feel that at work sometimes we have synthetic deadlines and artificial deadlines and things like that because somebody feels like that something need to be done. Look at the big picture like we talked about zooming out. Now you think about it, even if you didn't send that specification out on a Wednesday night, it would have been still fine because nobody was going to use it until the next Monday, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so every email that you get is an action item for you, but you don't have to reply immediately, right? If you really feel that you need to set something straight, just call the person who sent the email and talk to them and understand where they are coming from and what you can do for them.
Yeah. I like that practice of making sure you know what's priority, but also not jumping around. Because I mean, I think you're probably aware of the research. Jumping from multitasking is a fallacy, and when you jump from task to task, it really slows you down.
Absolutely. Context switching is very difficult, right? And oftentimes we don't work on one single project. We work on different projects throughout in any given week here. So one of my colleagues in program management, they told me to make sure that you make a mental model that Monday you are going to primarily work on project A, Tuesday you are going to do project B, and then maybe Thursday you are going to do C. And try to also, if you have multiple meetings and different topics, try to align it with the cadence you set.
Yeah.
And also take some time every week to make sure that write down what you did. So what you plan to do for next week, right? So I often do this practice, and then from time to time, after two years or so, I again go back to this distributed mode. Then I had to regroup and come back to this. Yeah, so it's like a make progress, then pull back, then again make progress, pull back.
Yeah, it sounds like it's something that you continually learn as a leader is have this system of focus or deep work, as Cal Newport would put it, or change it up. Like the zoom out is also good. So there's a balance there of not switch, but be in it, but not be in it forever. Be in it and then zoom out and let new things come. Yeah, that's a good lesson for all leaders. Yeah. So what's next for you? What's next for you to learn? Since you're always looking at something new, do you have something on your horizon?
Absolutely, right. So even though I have spent almost 5 years in the domain I am working, the ecosystem is making a lot of progress, right? Obviously, we hear about the need for moving AI from the cloud to the edge, AI on the local devices like your phone and the PCs, and that comes with a lot of requirements. So, and the pace of the solutions, that software solutions that are out there is changing very quickly, and hardware solutions want to move that fast. So, how do you make sure that what you think about is the right solution today, and it will take maybe 2 years to 3 years to hit the market, it's still going to be the right solution in the future? That kind of keeps me worried a little bit because the pace of change is too fast, and then hardware design change that fast.
Yeah. Actually,
Yes.
one of my feeds just had a notion about it. I forget exactly what it is, and I can put it in the notes, but it's if it's a project that takes 3 to 5 years to really become mature, which hardware does, but also creating a new business or creating a new endeavor, by the time you get everything in motion, it's 3 to 5 years. So you need to be working on what people will want in 3 to 5 years, not what people want today or what people need today.
Right.
It's an interesting kind of reflection for me.
Yeah. The other area is continuing to build a trust with the customers, right? So providing them the right information, right amount of information, at the right time will help build the bridge. Because as you said, the project is going to evolve, right? So we are going to start working with the customer from the concept phase. We are going to agree on certain features. But when we implement them, there could be bugs. We have to come up with workarounds, or we may have to not use that feature. Continue to build that trust is important.
Yeah, trust and being a trusted partner, whether you're working with others and collaborating on a technology or working with a customer as you do these days. Yeah, that can be very important to allow you to pivot and adapt, but also that 3 to 5 year notion is to have a better idea of what's underneath their request. So it's not just what they're asking for, but understanding why they're asking for it, because an alternate solution may get them to their why as opposed to what they're actually asking for.
Absolutely. Yeah. The other challenge with that also is that once you become the trusted partner, sometimes all the questions start coming to you and you could get overwhelmed. So one thing we need to be careful is that there are other people who can provide the answers, part of your team responsible for other things. Make sure that you give them the freedom to take ownership of those spaces. You don't need to answer all the questions. You need to find out who is the rightful owner and give it to them. Otherwise, we are going to have burnout.
Yeah, that's just very much who you are as a inclusive and collaborative person is. And it's also very practical as a trusted partner team as opposed to a trusted partner me.
Yes. Not a single person. As a team, we are trusted.
Yeah.
For making them
Probably more
successful.
effective, right?
Yes.
Because if you're on vacation, for example, somebody can jump in as well. All right. One last question is what is one word that defines your leadership mindset these days?
That's a great question. One word.
Yes, we can start with one word.
It's not going to be one word.
Okay.
What is the economic and human benefit that you are providing in service of others? That can be your internal stakeholders, your team members, your manager, your company, the other companies, the technical community or societies that you work with, like IEEE, etc. Always ask the question, what value am I adding? What human value and economic value? That is important. As long as you are providing those two things, you don't have to worry about continued productivity. But the moment you cease to stop providing that value, you need to look for new areas where you can add that value.
Yeah. That reminds me of the architect for impact.
Yes. Sorry,
Yes.
it was not one word, it was too many words.
No, that's good. Okay. Well, thank you for joining today, and looking forward to having another lunch one time.
Absolutely. Looking
All right.
forward to that next time you are in Arizona. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Anil Kumar. I'd like to leave you with 3 themes that emerge for me and ways to work with them. The first theme is architecting for impact. Anil reminds us that leadership is not about building something elegant in isolation. It's about ensuring the entire wave moves forward together. Coherency matters. So you might reflect on something you're currently focused on and ask, will this truly impact what matters most? How will I know when it does, or what evidence will there be of its impact? And Anil's powerful question, what economic and human value am I providing in service of others? The second theme is calm adaptability. It begins with humility and ownership. Humility to stay curious about what you do not yet know, and ownership to ask better questions and communicate in a way that connects the value to what matters for the other person. And then the willingness to pivot. Anil spoke about having a plan, but being ready to let it go, calmly accepting the situation and shifting without unnecessary friction. It might help you to think about these questions. How will you know if you need to adapt? What information is needed? How do you get it? And is it part of your systems? The other is, what is the worst thing that can happen? And how will you survive it? This can help you ground your worst case with a plan to deal with it. Once you know how to deal with the worst case, calmness can remain. And the last theme is technological disruption, like leadership disruption, is constant. The leaders who thrive are not the ones who cling to their expertise. They adapt, as discussed previously, and they also multiply their impact by bringing others along. Consider for yourself, what is the one action you can take this week to multiply your impact? Now, take time to architect your leadership for greater impact. Thanks for listening to Roar Mindset, Leading Through Chaos. Disruption isn't going away, but you can embrace it and turn it into an advantage. Until next time, stop fighting disruption, lead with clarity, and thrive in uncertain times.